Hello everyone, and welcome to Demystifying D&D in our new format.
Yeah, we're trying something new.
Yeah, we want to put more of these out, and with the way we used to shoot them, it just takes a lot of time for us. We have other jobs, other responsibilities we have to get to, so we think if we do it this way, it should be a little bit faster. We could probably get more of these out to you all. So, yeah, we're going to try this out.
Yeah.
Let us know what you think.
Yeah. Bye.
That's my cat, Kafka.
That's our mascot.
Pop in from time to time. Today we're going to be talking about the Matt Mercer Effect.
Yes. Is it real? What do you think? Well, that's the first question I see a lot of people say. Like, there is a debate on whether or not it even is an actual thing. Like, some people are like, the Matt Mercer Effect's not a thing. Some people are like, the Matt Mercer Effect is a thing. So that's like, first question. Do you think it's a thing?
I mean, I have not met anyone that has, you hear these horror stories online of players coming in and literally saying, like, you're not doing it like Matt Mercer does it and things like that. I've never had an experience like that. I've seen players that definitely try to kind of bring what they see on Critical Role into the games. And I know, like, for me personally as a DM, because Matt Mercer was the first DM I ever watched, and I mean, Mark, who's been on the channel, who's in Ravenloft, he ran Fragments of Eldoria, he was my first DM that I played with, and he and I both, I think, have a lot of influence from Matt Mercer, where, like, we see that as, like, something to aspire to get to. But simultaneously not holding ourselves to the standard of where he is, having done it for, like, he's done it for 20-something years now, and now is paid to do it, so he has weeks where he can just hone in completely on D&D. What about you?
I definitely would say that I think...
Well, you know what? I'm sorry, I hate to interrupt you, but maybe we should define the effect first.
What is the Matt Mercer Effect?
Yeah. The Matt Mercer Effect is a... Like I said, I don't know when it cropped up, like a couple years back. But it's essentially this idea where DMs are dealing with players that are coming to the table expecting the Dungeon Master to run the game just like Matthew Mercer of Critical Role. And because of that, there's like this, I guess, negative impact on the game because there's just a misalignment of what people are expecting from the game and what they're getting. So yes, what is your experience with the Matt Mercer Effect?
So very similar to you, I personally haven't come up against it. I definitely think it is a thing because I think some people can come into the game with expectations, especially if their only exposure to D&D and them having never played before is Critical Role, or various other D&D streaming shows that other people are really into. They come in expecting that, and I think that can cause a problem when someone comes in with expectations and a DM isn't delivering what they're expecting. They think that that's wrong because they've only had this one exposure to how D&D is. And so I definitely think the effect exists. I sometimes take issue, though, with people that think that means that Matt Mercer is ruining the game.
Yeah.
I think that is unfair to put on him.
Yeah, I just think, because we posted a video a while back kind of making fun of Critical Role fans playing D&D, and we got a lot of comments from people just saying, like, I hate Critical Role and, like, it's ruining the game, and to me, I'm just like, I feel like that's less of a, because they're just playing their game and having fun doing it, and they're getting paid to do it. Like, I don't know, do they owe something to Dungeons and Dragons to, like, shift how they want to play the game down to whatever other people expect of it? No, I don't think so.
On the contrary, in my opinion, they are one of the reasons Dungeons and Dragons is so popular, has had a resurgence in recent years. They're a big contributing factor to that.
Yeah.
So I would say, they brought the game to where it is now as far as its popularity.
I mean, they contributed to it, right? Like, I think it was already
getting
bigger.
Not the only ones, but yeah.
Like, I like Dimension 20 a lot, and I think they also contributed. I know you're not as big a fan. That's just a joke, because he loves Dimension 20.
I'm a very big Dimension 20
He turned
fan.
me over to them as opposed to the other way around.
But yeah, so, like, for me, very similar to you, my actually first exposure was the Adventure Zone.
Okay.
And you were my first real DM.
Yeah.
You invited me to play in your game, and I immediately started listening to, like, the Adventure Zone, because that's who I, like, when I Googled, like, D&D, like, podcasts and things like that first, that was the first thing that came up.
Okay.
So I was first in them, but they even have a very similar, like, very storytelling-based way of playing, less number crunchy about it. And then I found my way to Critical Role, and again, very similar to the way that I enjoy playing. So I guess maybe I haven't had the Mercer effect really affect me, because that is kind of the way I want to play, and I just happen to have found a group that also wants to play that way.
Yeah,
which is lucky.
It's also just tough for anyone that's in such a public eye the way that the Critical Role cast is, because I know there was a lot of critique that went out against Mercer Ray in the first campaign as well, and just people kind of I don't even know what they were saying, because I wasn't following the campaign that well, but it was something along the lines like, you're not playing the character right, yada yada yada, things like that.
Right. So if I could add a little context there, because I was watching it kind of towards where they were like getting ready to end it. Yeah, the big thing was she was playing a druid, and her wisdom on her character sheet was very, very high wisdom. However, sometimes Marisha was playing her super duper naive and was making a lot of what would be considered unwise decisions. So people would get upset because just like, your character's supposed to be wise and you're playing her in a way that seems unwise.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think it would frustrate people, because they're like, you're not playing the character the way I think you should play the character. I'm like, well, that's not fair.
Yeah,
it's her character.
That's my point, is that when they're in this public eye, they're going to get another level of critique that's kind of unfair. But to blame like Matt Mercer or anyone from Critical Role, or if then someone's like, someone's, I don't know, the Brendan Lee Mulligan effect or something like that. It's not really their fault. They're playing the game how they want to play, trying to have fun with their table, and their table enjoys that. So if you're having players show up at your table that are expecting that, I think that's actually more of a conversation that you need to have, as opposed to this kind of, I'm going to change how Critical Role plays so that players don't show up like this. Instead, you should be setting your expectations at your table. If you want to run a campaign that is just combat and numbers based, you don't want to do a lot of role play, you don't plan on doing voices or stuff, that's totally fine. But you need to communicate that with your players, and then they need to communicate their expectations with you. And I think the balance there is finding the middle ground. Like, I love a lot of role play campaigns, but I always ask my players, what do you want? And then I try to shift the campaign so that I'm also including a lot of what they want, as opposed to like, that's DM, man. We're just supposed to facilitate fun. That's what I think. Facilitate fun and tell a good story, but with our collaborators. And so obviously, like, including things your collaborators like, that's going to help you.
No, I totally agree. I think where again, I'm not sure, because I haven't come up to this myself, but I think where this may be coming into more effect is in like Adventure League, right? Okay. Where people are signing up to come and play a game together, and they're just kind of randomly put into groups, and everybody's coming in not knowing who the DM is and not knowing who the other players are, and everybody coming in with different styles and ways they play. And then it's like, okay, we're gonna play a game together. And everybody just coming in with different expectations and different styles, right? So I think for us, we've always we're bringing people in together, and like as far as people we know and people that have similar styles to us and things like that. Yeah. But eventually you kind of just are thrown into a blender and spread out. I did eventually one time, and very similarly, I wasn't like the people that everybody hates, as far as that toxic Critical Role player. I hope I wasn't. But I did go in, because the only experience I had playing was with you guys. Yeah. And so I did come in like playing the character, right? Like, but I'm a huge fan of combat, and I get very number crunchy sometimes. But like at certain points, I was trying to like be like the character and like just do character moments and not like full character, but just be silly with the character. Yeah. And they were less receptive. That one player in particular was very much like, no, we're not playing that way. And I was like, okay, man. Like, I don't have to. I just thought that,
Yeah. And I mean, I think in that situation, if you're a player going in, understand that you are being thrown into this kind of hodgepodge where you don't have that chance to communicate. And so first off, we should give everyone grace all the time. We don't understand what's going on in people's lives. Maybe there's some reason they're not able to be as receptive to the type of way you want to play. But regardless, like, one of my biggest tenets of life is, if you don't communicate what you need, then you can't hold someone accountable for not giving it to you. Like, you can't be mad at the DM for not doing voices and role play with you if you never said that's what you wanted. We can't go in with these assumptions, because it does just then build resentment, I think. And then it does make it tougher to play the game, especially in like a long-term setting. So I guess the question for DMs, new and old, is, should you try to be more like Matt Mercer? Is that something you should try to do?
That's an interesting question. Because I know there is this idea of like, I have my style. This is my style, right? And I understand that because I definitely know I have a style of DMing. However, I don't think it hurts to try stuff. You know, like if you just put yourself in a box and say, "This is me."
Yeah.
Like that's a weird way to live life, to refuse to like try to grow at all.
Yeah.
Like, or you know, to just try stuff. At the same time, I do understand. Like, hey, I'm just not comfortable doing character voices. Like, it makes me uncomfortable. It makes it hard for me to DM.
Yeah.
Like, then that's fully understandable. If you've given it a try and you're uncomfortable with it, and you just don't have a big passion to continue to do it, that's okay. You know, as long as your players at the table understand that about you, like, hey guys, like I've tried to do character voices before, I'm just not really comfortable with it. It pulls me out of the game. It doesn't make it as fun for you guys, so I'm not going to do them. That's fine. But refusing to try something, I think, is dangerous.
And the other thing I'd say with that, because I don't know, I think if you just say, like, I want to be just like Matt Mercer with my DM style, I just think that, you know, find your own. That's, I think, the ultimate way to go about it. But I think you can definitely take inspiration. I took so much inspiration from Matt Mercer, and I think if you watch our games, you see a lot of that, like, littered throughout. A lot of the descriptions, a lot of, like, trying the voices and things like that. But I've also found, like, oh, you know what? I kind of like to joke a lot more. I'm totally down to sacrifice a dramatic moment for a joke, which is maybe not great. But I know it's like part of my style. It's like I'm going to make even this like dramatic death. There might be like a slightly lighter moment. So I think ultimately, like, we don't want to stay stuck in our routine in life or in D&D. I mean, I can't remember who said it. I think it's probably someone before Jack Nicholson, but Jack Nicholson said, when you stop learning, you're dead. I think that's kind of true. Like, why aren't we always constantly trying to grow and expand ourselves? Even this idea of, like, knowing who we are as a person, let alone as a DM, is kind of flawed. We don't really fully know that. We're constantly evolving and shifting, and I think we should embrace that as DMs. And even this idea of, like, well, that doesn't make me comfortable to do it. Growing is not necessarily comfortable. I feel like this is a douchey example, but it's the one I'm thinking of, which is weightlifting. When you're weightlifting, you're not comfortable as you're trying to press 225 or whatever you're at. But that's how you grow the muscle, is through that uncomfort. That's how you get better at it, right? And so, well, we might say, like, yeah, you know, doing voices, that is uncomfortable to me. Maybe just try pushing yourself. Maybe you only use one NPC voice, and now try doing like a lower octave for another NPC, and those are the two. You know, and just see how that works for a while. Maybe after 4 or 5 sessions, that becomes a really easy thing for you, and then you can think about, maybe I want to add something else, or maybe I want to try an accent. And I also think if you're playing with a table, particularly like friends or people you know, if you just say, hey, you know, I kind of want to play with trying voices, if you guys don't mind. Like, it'll probably be hit or miss, but I'd like to try it. I bet they'll be pretty forgiving. I've never had a player, you know, when I try an accent I'm not very good at, shout out at me in like an angry way. They might poke fun at it a little bit, like, oh, this guy was British to start, and now he's, what, Jamaican? But for the most part, I think players are pretty forgiving about those kind of things.
No, absolutely. And I think the other part of the Matt Mercer effect is not like just like the voices and like that. It's like the way that he like lays out his stories, how intricate and how complicated and tied in, and everything is related to it and stuff. Like, he's very good at making everything in this game circle back on itself thematically or even narratively, which is pretty impressive. Yeah. And I think some people come in expecting that, right? And that's not... we talked about this. He is a professional. He has so much time to develop his stories. He gets paid to do it. You know, somebody running a game at their local game shop doesn't have that. They have their whole lives, and this is maybe 1-2 nights of the week where they're running a game. Yeah. They don't have that same luxury of really making things like super duper in depth and complex. It may just be a much more simple, laid out story. Yeah. And that can be fun to play too. It's just something. It is all about your expectations and the way you give people empathy at the table. Yeah. Whether they're doing things the way you think you prefer or not. We all need to just understand each other a little bit better. Yeah, I think that's a really fair point. Yeah, so ultimately, I think with the Matt Mercer effect, you know, it really only exists if you think it exists. If you
enforce it on another player or you kind of enforce it on yourself. And I think that goes with, these haven't been talked about, but I know we had comments again on that video, like, I'll start DMing like Matt Mercer when you start playing like Sam Riegel or something like that. And yeah, even that, like, I think find your own style. As long as my whole thing with any kind of Dungeons and Dragons thing is like, as long as you're not like a totally mean person at the table, you're not insulting people, you're not being sexist or homophobic or racist in any way, you're not making people uncomfortable, then I really could care less how you have fun. If you have fun just doing numbers, doing no NPC voices or anything like that, no character voices, that's awesome. I'm glad you're having fun. If you're like, you know what, I do want my game to resemble more of like a Critical Role style, and you communicate that with your DM, and they're open to it, and you guys are constantly pushing each other, but also forgiving each other if maybe you fall short in different moments, then that's great too. You know, ultimately it's just, how do you want to have fun, and can we have empathy for fellow people at our table?
Exactly. I agree.
Great. Well, that was Demystifying D&D. So this is going to be our new format going forward, at least for a bit here. And yeah, let us know what you think of the Matt Mercer Effect. Are we making too light of it? Did we bring up great points and destroy this forever? Will Matt Mercer see this and contact us? Please, Matt. Please, Matt. Matt, please.
Can Justin bench press 225?
Not anymore, I can't.
Oh.
Not anymore. You slip a disc and it's gone.
Oh, that's fair.
Yeah.
But why is the analogy to weightlifting douchey? I feel like that's a great analogy.
That we'd have to demystify a whole other, like, we'd have to demystify the explanation of weightlifting.
Hey, let's do it. Get in the comments if that's what you want. Like this if you want.
Let us know what else you want us to demystify. And remember, no guts, no story. We said it again.
We did.